this far. And good morning, everyone. Let me introduce again. And my name is Jutarat Wongrat, and I'm a labor specialist from the Standard Development Bureau, Department of Labor Protection and Welfare, Ministry of Labor, Thailand. It's my pleasure to be here today, and I would like to thank for inviting for our department to share Thailand experience in implementing the ILO Work in Fishing Convention number 188 with a particular focus on the protection of workers in the fishery sectors. As the implementation of convention involves several government agency, today's presentation will focus on the responsibility and action of the Department of Labor Protection and Welfare in its capacity as the Thailand Principal Labor Inspectorate. Well, for today's presentation, before we begin, allow me to provide a brief overview for today's presentation. I will start with the overview of why Thailand ratified this convention and followed by our implementation mechanisms, the law and regulations we have put in place, the competent authority involved in implementation, the law of labor inspector, and finally, the challenges that we continue to face. Well, first, I would like to briefly introduce the background to Thailand's ratification of the ILO Work in Fishing Convention number 188. As many of you may know, Thailand was the first country in Asia and Southeast Asia to ratify the convention. We ratified in 2019. This was an important milestone in strengthening the protection of fishery workers and promoting decent work in this sector. But so why did Thailand ratify this convention? One of the key driving forces was the need to strengthen governance in the fishery sector. Following the European Union yellow card on IUU fishing, so Thailand undertook comprehensive reform to improve fishery management and labor protection. Ratified Convention number 188 demonstrates that Thailand's commitment to improve the working and living conditions of the fishery workers, preventing forced labor and other forms of labor abuse, and promoting responsible and sustainable fisheries. The ratification has also brought significant benefits to Thailand. It has strengthened Thailand's efforts to combat IUU fishing, enhanced confidence among our international trading partners, especially the European Union and the USA, and also improved the competitiveness of Thailand's seafood export in the global market. Well, next, I will now turn the implementation of the convention. Thailand implementation is based on three main approaches. First, strengthen laws and regulation to ensure that our domestic legal framework is aligned with international standards. Second, enhancing the effectiveness of labor law enforcement. And lastly, we fostering collaboration among domestic and international partners to ensure coordinated and effective response. Well, the first approach that I said before is strengthening laws and regulation to ensure that Thailand domestic legal framework is aligned with international standard. When it comes to the protection of fishery workers, it is important to note that Thailand doesn't have a single comprehensive law governing all aspects of all their protection. Instead, relevant provisions are contained in several pieces of legislation, so there are many legislation to implement to protect all these workers. And as you can see on the slide, the principal law that has aimed at protecting the fishery workers directly has the three main laws include the Labor Protection in Sea Fishery Work Act 2019, and the ministerial regulation concerning labor protection in sea fishery work that has been enforced in 2020. And the another one is the Royal Ordinance on Fisheries that has been enforced in 2015 and it has amended later on. In addition, the main legislation, several other law, we have several other law complement this legal framework. It might not be directly, but it involves the fishery sector. As the fishery sector relies on heavily on migrant workers, the Royal Ordinance on Management of Foreign Workers' Employment, administered by the Department of Employment under Ministry of Labor, play an important role to protect the migrant worker. Furthermore, because fishery workers may be vulnerable to be forced labor and human trafficking, we have be enforced the Anti-Trafficking in Person Act, also provide important legal protection to fishery workers. Well, for this slide, I would like to present the timeline of legal and regulatory developments concerning the protection of fishery workers in Thailand. Before Thailand ratified the convention in 2019, legal and regulatory reform has already begun to align the domestic legislation with international standards. By the time significant progress has been made, approximately 80% of plan reform, Thailand proceed with the ratification of the convention. And shortly after ratification, the Labor Protection in Sea Fishery Work Act was enacted, and this act served as a landmark piece of legislation specially designed to implement the provisions of the ILO Convention. In addition, the new act and the revised the regulation that has been enacted before were developed to complement each other and ensuring comprehensive protection for fishery workers while avoiding duplication of legal provisions. Well, first of all, I would like to show about the provision under the Labor Protection in Fishing Act. The Labor Protection in Fishing Act established the responsibilities of vessel owner, the duties of fisheries in accordance with international standards. The act applies broadly but exempts subsistence fishing, freshwater fishing, recreational fishing, and smaller vessels as defined by Minister of Agriculture. And key labor protection under this act include medical fitness certificate for all fishers, repatriation rights for those fishing outside Thai water, recruitment fee to be borne by ship owner, health benefit on board accommodation for vessel, and the act also includes the anti-retaliation measure. Workers are fully protected if they file a complaint against their employer. In terms of enforcement, competent officials have the authority to inspect vessels, interview stakeholders, issue compliance order, suspend the fishing operations of non-compliant vessels. Additionally, the Act requires an on-board living and working conditions certificate for safe fishing operation. So this is the example of the work in fishing certificate. This certificate is issued under Article 14 of the Labor Protection in Fishing Act and confirm that the vessel has passed the inspection on living and working condition on board. And importantly, this certificate is a prerequisite of obtaining permission at to fish at sea. Well, the next one is the Ministerial Regulation on Sea Fishing Work, which this law is under the authority of the Department of Labor Protection and Welfare because the ministerial regulation has been issued under the Labor Protection Act. So the labor inspectors have the authority to ensure that the employers have comply with the law. As you see, the Ministerial regulation on sea fishery work is the latest revise is in 2022. This law provides detailed standards for employment conditions. Key provision includes a prohibition on employer person under 18 years of age. Employment contract need to provide it in a language understood by migrant workers, and a minimum of 10 hours rest per 24-hour period, and no more than 74 working hours per 7-day period, and with a mandatory record keeping of less hours that the owner of the vessel need to keep the record and then to show to the labor inspector at least and next at least 30 days of annual leave and 30 days of paid sick leave per year. When it's come to on wages, workers must be paid at or above the statutory minimum wage on a monthly basis via bank transfer. Workers stranded abroad are entitled at least 50% of the minimum wage, and workers may also request the wages that to be transferred directly to the designated family members. Finally, and for workers have the right to adequate welfare, food, drinking water, medicine, and medical supply and sanitary facilities in accordance with the fisheries law that for the vessel of the 60 gross tons or more. Well, for the next one, is the main law, is the Royal Ordinance on Fisheries. It was enforced in 2015 and is amended in 2017 and most recently on the last year. And this law aims to combat IUU fishing. It not only protects the fisher welfare, it promotes sustainable fisheries management, protect the marine environment, safeguard fishers' welfare, and help prevent illegal labor practice in this sector. With regard to the protection of workers, the ordinance includes several key provisions. For example, it's about the process, about the pre-departure process that prior to departure, vessel owners are required to submit documentation to the port in port out centers. This includes vessel registration, fishing license, gear type, crew list, and detail of departure and arrival. And even they go to the sea and coming back to the port, they need to be checked again. In addition, in the Royal Ordinance on Fisheries, the transfer of crew between fishing vessels during operation is strictly prohibited. Except in case of emergency for safety reason, any such transfer must be reported to the port in port out center within 24 hours. Well, when it comes to the labor inspection in the fishery sector, while the legal framework has been developed in line with international standards, enhancing law enforcement is one of our focus as well. The Department of Labor Protection and Welfare that I said before serves as the principal labor inspectorate with the responsibility to ensure compliance with the Labor Protection Act by both employers and employees. The Act applies when an employment relationship is established and does cover recruitment process, but the recruitment process falls under the responsibility of the Department of Employment. Turning to labor inspection in the fishery sectors, inspections are conducted throughout the fishing cycle, including before departure, upon return to the port, and during operation at sea. At establishments, labor inspection have the authority to enter to the establishment under the Labor Protection Act. Therefore, the labor inspectors are able to enter fishing-related establishment that include the fishing process, the fish processing establishment. At Port multidisciplinary team, we have conduct with multidisciplinary team inspection before vessel depart or upon their return. As this is due to the fishing vessel are to treated as the establishment under the labor protection law. And at sea as well, inspection may be also carried out during active fishing operation, but the labor inspectors cannot work alone because we don't have any resources, we don't have the vessel, we don't have a boat to go to the sea, so we need the cooperation from the other governmental agency like Department of Fishery or the Marine Department. As can be seen that the implementation of the convention cannot be carried out by a single agency alone. Effective implementation requires close cooperation among multiple government agencies and stakeholders at all levels. In this regard, new coordination mechanism has been developed, including the Port In Port Out Center, which serve as important platform for strengthening monitoring, coordination, enforcement across the fisheries sectors. Well, when it comes to the Port In Port Out Control Center, are a critical part of Thailand enforcement infrastructure. Right now, there are currently 30 Port In Port Out Control Centers and 22 forward inspection points operating across Thailand coastal provinces, covering 89 fishing ports and pier nationwide. And Thai Port Center has been established in 2015 as an interagency task force. The centers operated through 85 multidisciplinary teams responsible for inspecting fishing vessels before departure and upon arrival. And the main partner agency that you can see that it's a Marine Department, the Department of Fisheries, the Department of Labor Protection and Welfare, the Department of Employment. But in reality, there are still more agencies have been involved. For example, for the Royal Thai Navy, for the Royal Police, and for DSI or Immigration Bureau that has been working with us. Well, for competent authorities at port that I said before that there are 4 types of officials work together at the Port Center. Vessel inspect, and we have a different inspection that is based on each mandate. For vessel inspectors from Marine Department that have the authority to check vessel safety and crew qualification. And for the Department of Fishery, they are responsible for carrying out pre-departure inspection of license, equipment, and verify catch before unloading. And the Department of Labor Protection and Welfare, working as the labor inspector, we have verified employment status, working condition, and last one is the Department of Employment, and they focus on the migrant worker about the recruitment, employment processes for migrant worker. And at sea as well, we can go to the sea while the fishing operation. Inspection are conducted via fishery patrol vessel jointly operated by the Royal Thai Navy, the Department of Fisheries, the Marine Department, along with the Thai Maritime Enforcement Commander Center. And sometimes the labor inspector has go out with them. Well, when it's come to the law of the labor inspector under the Department of Labor Protection and Welfare, their work is carried out in 3 main areas. First, we have a inspection, the checklist-based inspection focused on employment condition, working condition, and welfare on board fishing vessel. And the second, we conduct worker interviews to verify or that we check and identify indicator of forced labor and human trafficking. And the last one, we have the authority to issue compliance order when the employer have been comply with the law, especially the labor protection law, and taking enforcement action in accordance with their legal mandate. Well, at the Pineapple Center, this is the things that we have checked on board. We have checked a range of items based on the ministerial regulation concerning labor protection in sea fishery work, including the worker age, employment contract, employee record, wage payment records, rest period record, and include warning sign, safety notice on board, welfare and living condition, and whether medicine and first aid supply are in depth. And you can see the picture is on the above is about the sea book, about the identification book to identify the identity of the fishery workers. And for the bottom is about the warning sign that we encourage the employers to include this side to educate the worker to be safe on vessel. And as shown in this slide, this is our form when we inspect. And inspection findings are recorded in a standardized report covering both working and living condition on board fishing vessel as you seen on the first one. And the checklist is used by officials to verify compliance with the regulation and to determine whether any labor violation has occurred. It's about the checklist, yes or no, foul or not foul. In addition, labor inspection assess working condition and overall environment to identify potential indicators of forced labor or human trafficking under the Anti-Trafficking in Person Act. The finding are a cross-check with the relevant agency under the Pineapple Center to ensure accuracy and transparency. This standardized reporting system help ensure consistency across all port in port out centers and provide a reliable and verifiable record of compliance. In addition, a document check, labor inspector also conduct interviews with workers. During these interviews, inspector must be ensured that the discussion take place away from vessel owner or skipper in a safe and confidential environment where workers feel comfortable to speak freely. To support the communication with migrant workers, as we know that there are migrant workers working in this sector a lot. So the department has also provided 34 interpreters stationed at the port in port out center across the country. So when they do inspection at the port, the labor inspector bring or interpreter with them and to ensure that the migrant worker have access to their right. While during the interviews, inspector conduct initial screening for indicator of forced labor and human trafficking as well. Where potential victims are identified, they are referred to the National Referral Mechanism, or is called NRM, to receive appropriate protection and support. Well, and the last mechanism for implementation for Thailand. And Thailand recognized that effective implementation requires collaboration beyond government agency alone. We work closely with international organization, worker representative, and and non-governmental organizations and other stakeholders to develop strategies for strengthening labor rights protection. And as you see the example that we have the collaboration with our partner through the ILO-led Ship to Shore Rights program, we promote safe migrant decent work and sustainable fishery and seafood supply chains across Southeast Asia. We have also conduct joint training with the International Justice Mission or IJM to build the capacity of the labor inspectors in interviewing technique and identification of forced labor and trafficking for labor exploitation. And the last one for the challenges for the implementation, despite the progress we made, we continue face real challenges. First, exploitation tactic has become increasingly sophisticated. And the second one, workers are now being controlled through the debt, documentation, or an immigration status rather than physical force, making abuse harder to detect. Third, abuse is often hidden behind the labor dispute and unfair employment practice. And the last one is now you can see that the rise of scam operation has posed a direct the challenge to enforcement, particularly the requirement that wage be paid directly into worker bank accounts because they cannot register at the bank to get the bank account, and sometimes they stop their bank account because the police thought that they are might be the one who are the scammer. So it's quite difficult challenges for us to enforce the law. But right now we are review over the law and to ensure that all workers are protected in line with the international labor standard. And so that's all for my presentation, and thank you so much.